And I want to introduce my wife, Jody Emery, who will be taking over for me in my business activities and my political activities. She's a Green Party candidate for Vancouver South in the upcoming and I hope imminent and soon federal election. I'm looking forward to her representing our culture and our fight against prohibition, which should be every Canadian's fight, because prohibition only causes misery and harm to families. And I think my wife, over the months ahead, will be an example and demonstration of the kind of anguish and heartbreak it can bring to someone over something as innocuous and I dare say beautiful and beneficent as the cannabis plant. And I introduce my wife, Jody Emery.
You're here, Mark. This is a witch hunt.
Devastated, but I'm furious. Our Canadian government is abandoning Canadians abroad and sending Canadian citizens like my husband to a foreign country to be punished under severe laws. My husband never went to the United States to sell these seeds. The Vancouver police investigated Mark here for selling seeds, and the court said it's not worth prosecuting. Nobody would care about that. So the Vancouver police gave the information to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and said, get this man and punish him in your country where we know it will be a worse punishment. And that's why they came after him and said, we want 3 indictments with mandatory minimums of 10 years each. That was 30 years minimum up to life that my husband was facing in U.S. prison. So to be forced into taking this 5-year plea deal, at least I'll see him again alive. But everybody needs to know this Conservative government had the chance over a year ago to sentence Mark to a term in Canada. The Americans said Mark can stay in Canada if the Canadian government sentences him there. And the Conservatives refused. They abandoned Mark. They're sending him south. They abandoned Canadians all over the world. And people should be furious about this. I've been crying endlessly, but now I'm angry. And everybody should be angry. I'll bring my husband back home to me, please.
Take a good look at the drug war, America. Take a good look at your war on drugs.
I'll take any questions if anyone has them. Just yell them out.
Mr. Emery, how confident are you that the government will either support or not object to your transfer back to a Canadian institution under the treaty?
Well, Todd Greenberg, the Assistant District Attorney of Western Washington, assured me that his office would not oppose any transfer of myself back to a Canadian prison. So the onus will be on the Conservative government, who have so far refused to repatriate anyone convicted in the United States of a marijuana offense. And that bodes poorly for me. It means that we have incentives in this country. If people want to protect the value of Canadian sovereignty, they should vote for another political party in the upcoming federal election and defeat the Conservative government, or we must convince the Conservative government to behave in a more responsible manner and repatriate Canadians under our treaty agreements. I don't have a lot of confidence that the Conservatives are sympathetic to Canadian sovereignty. I don't even believe most Conservatives like Canadians or like Canada, and so I'm cynical about what can be done there. But we have no other choice but to put the force of numbers to the government to this day. I want people to call the Minister of Justice and say, don't extradite him. I want them to reconsider Bill C-15 in the Senate, and I need Canadians to consider how much they value Canadian sovereignty and what they're willing to do about it.
Mark, do you have any political support in Canada?
Yes.
What do you like your name?
Well, I believe Libby Davies and Bill Sixay will bring up something in Parliament this week on my behalf. I know the Bloc is very sympathetic. The Bloc's argument is this: if the Canadian government isn't willing to protect Mark Emery, then what's the purpose of being a Canadian? The sovereigntists in Quebec are saying it would be much better to be a member of a sovereign Quebec than a sovereign Canada if this is the value of the citizenship of this country. If I can be extradited for something as harmless as selling seeds to consenting adults, and I've never had a victim and I've never had a complaint, then what is the value of Canadian citizenship? That's something to ponder very greatly in Quebec right now, and the Bloc Quebecois will be bringing this up in the upcoming federal election. Is Canadian citizenship of any value? That will be their question posed in the upcoming election, and it's a very valuable question. In the meantime, the Liberal Justice critic Marlene Jennings last year said it was wrong to extradite me, and I expect that the Liberal government and the Bloc and the NDP and the Green Party will all be supportive of repatriating me back to Canada.
Mr. Emery, two questions if I may. is the transfer of your company to your wife, is it completed?
No, it'll be completed later on this week.
Okay. Second question, do you see this ordeal as a setback for the movement to legalize or decriminalize marijuana, or do you see it as a kind of blessing in disguise, if I may say so?
Well, it'd have to be a big disguise if it's a blessing, but I look forward to people getting upset about my incarceration. Sometimes, in order to get change, you need a crisis. No change happens in a vacuum, and I'm going to need a crisis. I'm going to need a crisis to help change this government. We're going to need a crisis to help repeal this prohibition, and we're going to need a crisis in order to bring me back to Canada. I'm hoping I have millions of supporters in Canada and the United States who will make an awful lot of noise and make it politically unpalatable to keep me both in the United States and keep me incarcerated.
Make no mistake about it, Mark Emery is a political prisoner. The day of his arrest, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration said Mark Emery, the leader of a marijuana legalization movement, was arrested. This is a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. They went on to say, and I want to hold this up here because this is damning. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of Emery's illicit profits are known to have been channeled to marijuana legalization groups active in the United States and Canada. Drug legalization lobbyists now have one less pot of money to rely on. They also say Mark Emery has been designated as one of the Attorney General's most wanted international drug trafficking organizational targets, one of only 46 in the world and the only one from Canada. When you consider that there are people moving tons of cocaine and damaging, harmful drugs and weapons and all sorts of horrible things, and Mark Emery, who sold seeds and gave away every dollar, that he's the United States' #1 drug trafficking target out of Canada, this is insulting, it's an outrage, and we know from this statement it's all about it being a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. It's about our magazine, it's about money, it's about lobbying, it's about legalizing marijuana. And what Mark Emery did, there's no mention of victims. There's nobody hurt, there's nobody ripped off, there's no harm done except for what's being done to Mark Emery, to the people who love him. This is very important. Mark Emery is a political prisoner. Look around you and you know these people believe it. People all over the world today and for days on end are standing in solidarity with Mark. They're supporting him because they know this is unjust, and we all know it's unjust. America, the government, is evil at times. It does evil things to people. It destroys lives. And the Canadian Senate said in 2002 that the continued prohibition of cannabis jeopardizes the health and well-being of Canadians more so than does the substance itself. Prohibition is the problem. Mark Emery, my husband, is a victim of this war on drugs. I am a drug war widow, and there are hundreds of thousands of others out there who suffer in silence because their loved ones are put behind bars with a stigma attached to being a criminal. But Mark Emery is not a criminal. He was breaking a law openly and defiantly to say this is wrong and we need to change the laws, and nobody should go to prison for a plant. Absolutely nobody.
Hear, hear.
What's the process now, Mark? What's happening after?
What happens today is I will be delivered up to the court and handcuffed at about 10:15, and they'll be put in North Fraser Detention Center. Actually, it's a remand center, and I will be awaiting the decision of the Attorney General, the Minister of Justice, to sign the extradition order. If he does not sign the extradition order, I will be released at some point, and if he does sign the extradition order, I will be sent to Seattle, where I will be held for a few weeks and then sentenced to this 5-year term and then sent to a sorting station in Oklahoma City, where I will be then sent out to a federal penitentiary somewhere in the United States. And that itself will take several weeks to go from North Fraser to my final destination in some U.S. federal penitentiary.